Hello students, welcome to My Abhyas. I am Suparna here, your biology faculty. Here we are with our second chapter of 12th standard. Are you all excited to start a new chapter? I am very excited to start a new session with you. Let's start and let us understand that what is stored in this chapter for us. Previous chapter, when we discussed this chapter 1, I have told you that this unit is reproduction, and we are going to discuss about reproduction in 4 chapters in the first unit. I mean, as per the textbook, it is 6th unit in your 12th standard textbook, but that 6th unit contains 4 chapters. So the first one was the introduction one. We have discussed commonly about all the different modes of reproduction, asexual mode of reproduction and sexual mode of reproduction. And then we have commonly discussed about how does a plant reproduces and how does an animal reproduces. But those all were a very common discussion over there. We have not specifically studied anything till there in the first chapter. What we are going to do now is, from this chapter onwards, that is second chapter of your 12th standard, we will be starting with understanding of individually about animals and the plants. So the first chapter when we talk about in class 12 biology, that is chapter 2 over here, is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So in this chapter we are going to talk about how does a plant reproduces. There are a lot of events which takes place. There are a lot of changes that happens in the plant's body during this whole process of the reproduction. And different plants behaves differently. Some of them will be having self-pollination. Some plants are cross-pollinating flowers. There are so many varieties are there. So we'll learn each and everything in this particular chapter in detail. Now, if I wanted to talk about what is the weightage of the chapter, as I promised in the first chapter that I'll be discussing about this particular slide every time before I start any new unit. So if I talk about a new chapter over here, this chapter comes under unit 2, that is reproduction. As you can see, it is unit 6 and the unit number is 6 and the unit is reproduction. We have done with this first chapter, that is reproduction in organisms. Okay. Now the second chapter is sexual reproduction in plants. In this chapter, we are going to talk about how does flowering plant reproduces sexually. And how many marks are allotted over here? There are 8 marks allotted in this chapter. If you see this from this unit number 6, we have 4 chapters, right? And this chapter has the maximum marks allotted. You can see the first chapter has 5 marks, second chapter has 8 marks. Third chapter, that is human reproduction, which we are going to study after this, is having 7 marks, and reproductive health, from there we may get 5 mark questions. So now you can understand by seeing this slide itself that this particular chapter is having 8 marks of weightage. How much? 8 marks. Now where these 8 marks are going to come? In your board exams. So as per your board exams point of view, this chapter is very, very important. Fine. What about the competitive exams? What about the pre-medical exams and the NEET exams and CET exams? When we say about NEET, CET and pre-medical exams, few years back, this chapter was not given so much of importance. Like before the syllabus has revised and all. Now, recently, the pattern is from this particular chapter, there are like 4 to 5 questions which is asked. And that is quite a lot when you talk about competitive exams. Because you know, right, 4 to 5 questions from one particular chapter will be carrying around 20 marks. If a question is of 4 marks in NEET, then 5 questions will be carrying approximately 20 marks. And that is quite a lot of number to score from one chapter. That will automatically push your rank if you are really looking for your competitive exams good rank in the particular competition. So what I mean to say is this particular chapter, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plant, is one of the very important chapter of your second year. Comparative to the previous chapter, this is the, and as you can see, you can only see that the marks distribution here, this chapter has highest marks weightage. Okay, so for on that point of view, we are going to learn this chapter, study this chapter completely in depth. Also, we'll be discussing about all the possible types of NEET, CET, JEE questions, whatever it can come from this particular chapter. We'll be talking about everything over here. Clear? So let us start with the chapter. We'll start with the slideshow over here. Okay, now we'll start with the introduction first. What exactly we are going to talk about? We are basically talking about sexual reproduction in flowering plant. What is a flower? Flower is so beautiful. Flower is so colorful. Flower has so many varieties. It has such a beautiful fragrance. So flower is a fascinating organ of angiosperm. Do you think that a flower is only produced to entertain us? Is it like humans has used flowers in different ways? Okay. If you see that flowers basically are the organs of angiosperm to reproduce sexually. It is nothing to do with our happiness, with our sorrow, with our grief. But if you think that we use flowers in different occasion, we use flowers in happiness, we use flowers in sadness, we use flower for our cultural things, also during the social performances, or maybe in some devotional thing also. Where like every place we just represent that particular thing with a flower. But remember over here one thing, that flower is not produced because to entertain us. It is not for our usage. Flower is a organ of a plant. It is a sexual reproduction organ of plant. Okay, so flowers are the organs of sexual reproduction. And how they are reproducing? They reproduce by the forming gametes by the process of meiosis. It is the same process that is followed by any sexually reproducing organisms. It may be plant, it may be animal. So here in the flower also we see a cell division that is called as meiosis. I hope you know what is meiosis. Meiosis is a type of cell division where the diploid number of chromosomes will be converted to haploid number of chromosome by this process. So what is a flower? If I want to define flower, what I'm going to say, flower are the organs of sexual reproduction as they produce gametes by meiosis. Flowers are the organs of sexual reproduction because they produce gametes by the process of meiosis. And flowers have been used, as I told you, in different ways by humans for showing different type of emotions. Those emotions are like love, affection, happiness, grief and mourning. So all these things were we use flowers for all this process. Also for devotional purposes, as I told you, also for anywhere any person is coming to your school or college, what exactly is done? A flower bouquet is given. During the devotional things, during the in the temples or in any type of religious matters, flower is used. So basically flower is not for our entertainment purpose, not for our showing our grief and showing our happiness. It is a modified shoot. Flower is a modified shoot. This is the exact definition if we wanted to say. Flower is a modified shoot. So in a plant, there is a root system and there is a shoot system, right? So root system goes down, shoot system comes above the soil of the plant. Now flower is one of the part of that shoot system, which is a converted shoot. That is, the stem has converted itself in such a way that it formed a flower. Now, where do we use flowers? Let us start the chapter in an easy note, that let us give some examples where we use flowers and for different purposes. Let us see what are the example. We use flowers for the aesthetic beauty, like we have this. Okay, now where do we use flowers? We use flowers for our different purposes. For example, if I wanted to show you this, we use flowers for these are the flowers which are having some aesthetic beauty and the ornamental values. Okay, so you can see that aesthetic beauty, we have orchids, gerbera and the tulip. Okay, so we have this flowers which is used for aesthetic beauty. Those are orchids, gerbera, carnations and tulip. Ornamental value, those are used or worn by us, by humans, as an ornament. And on that we have these flowers like mogra, rose, night jasmine. This is This rose, obviously you know this. This is mogra, that's an ornamental plant, and this is night jasmine. All these flowers have fascinating color or a beautiful fragrance, and that is why we are so attracted towards flowers, isn't it? I'm not you. I am a very big fan of all the different type of flowers. I love flowers, but I love to see the flowers blooming on a plant rather than plucking it and using for something else. Okay, so mogra is one of the very important ornamental plant, and I hope you know that mogra flowers are used by women a lot to put it in on their hairs as a handband and whatnot. So many things has been done. Okay, now flowers are the modified shoot, as I told you, and it is also the reproductive organ of the plant. It is the one and only reproductive organ of the plant where the sexual reproduction can happen. There are other methods of reproductions also, like the vegetative mode of reproduction, where they need not to produce the gamete, the flower need not to, and the flower need not to be produced, but still a plant can be created. But in those cases, there is no gamete formation. What is happening in those cases? There is no gamete formation. But when we talk about flowers, flowers are those organs where there will be a gamete formation. Here are some more examples which says that where we use it. We use flowers for social, cultural, religious celebration like marigold, chrysanthemum, sunflower, rose, lotus. All these are used for different type of religious and the social and cultural gathering. During the floriculture is growing the flowers. I'll tell about it. During floriculture, there are different flowers which is grown by the farmers, especially in a covered and protected environment. And we have rose, carnation, anthurium. All these flowers will be growing over there. Okay, let us see the next one. So flowers are the reproductive organs of an angiosperms and for floriculture. What is floriculture? Floriculture is flower farming, that is studying about flowers. Did you get it? When a person wanted to study about flowers and grow the flowers for the marketing purposes, for the commercial purposes, then that practice is called as floriculture. So floriculture or flower farming. Floriculture means flower farming. What is this? Floriculture means flower farming. What it is? It is the study of growing and marketing flowers and ornamental plants. Also the ornamental plants comes over there. Some plants will be very beautiful looking, have different varieties of leaves on them. Those are used as ornamental plants. So those are also comes over here. So floriculture, as you can see, this may be a particular beautiful floricultural place where all these different varieties of flowers which is growing, and it looks so beautiful. So floriculture is also called as flower farming, and where actually we study the growing of the flower and marketing of the flower. This was the introduction about flowers. When we are talking about flower, we should know about all these things, like where we use flowers. But basically what a flower is actually a reproductive organ of a plant. I am telling again and again, flower is blooming for its own purpose, not for our entertainment, not for showing any type of happiness, sadness or something like that. Flowers are only produced for the reproduction of the plants, and that too it is for the sexual reproduction of the plants. Okay. Let us start with the chapter by knowing about. Okay. Here I have the picture of marigold flower, hibiscus flower in angiosperms. Now, which plant produces flowers? Flower producing plants are called as angiosperms. Then what is the other category? The other category is gymnosperm. Gymnosperms are those organisms which do not produce flower. They directly produce the seed. Okay. So in angiosperm, during the reproductive phase, a part of a flower are produced which takes part in the reproduction. In the previous chapter, when we are discussing chapter 1, there I have told you three things. That is, there are three fascinating parts of a particular plant or particular organism's life cycle. That is pre-reproductive stage or juvenile stage, reproductive stage and sentient stage. I hope you remember this. If you have forgotten, let me just quickly revise you. Juvenile phase,